Hello and welcome to this edition of Bayou Time. I'm your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. Very glad you're joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it. And listen, I don't have to tell anybody about how hot it is. I don't have to make comments about that. We all know when we're in triple digits and very often that we have some significant heat out there. It's always good to know what to do about that. And I'm always glad to have professionals on to tell us how to do that. Welcome, Amelia Castell. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Of course, Community Wellness Project Coordinator over at Terrebonne General Health System. Tell me a little bit about that role for you at Terrebonne General.
Right. So my role is pretty unique into where I get to find wellness initiatives or wellness needs in the community and act upon those needs that I find and start wellness programs and promote healthy lifestyles and education for our community.
And look, that's one of the big things that I think is very, very important. I love the role that Terrebonne General has in the health and wellness of our community. It's been something that I think people have really embraced, and that we get to see you guys out and about so often doing that education. So I'm glad you do it through us as well.
Right. I know. I spend a lot of my time out in the community, which I
Right.
love. I get to meet a lot of different people, reach a lot of different populations, and just trying to make an impact on people and get people moving in the right direction.
I like it. One of those things is that people don't necessarily understand heat exhaustion. Let's talk about it maybe in its definition and how people can kind of recognize it.
Right. So heat exhaustion is the most common heat-related condition seen in active populations.
Okay.
It's defined as a cardiac insufficiency. So that is just when the heart is not able to give enough oxygenated blood to the muscles and the organs, and also just an energy depletion.
Okay.
And this is exacerbated by dehydration,
Right.
which,
And that's where those go together, right? That
right,
heart impact with dehydration.
right. The dehydration is really one of the main contributors and factors as far as heat exhaustion is concerned.
Gotcha. So if somebody's out working in the heat or playing in the heat, what are some of the signs and symptoms that they need to be aware of?
So there are several, and they're not all necessarily going to show up. It just depends person to person on
Right.
what kind of signs or symptoms they're going to show.
Okay.
But we've got fatigue, dizziness, lightheadedness, thirst, decreased urine output, so dehydration, irritability, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, low
Chills.
blood pressure, chills.
Okay. And I say that because I've been there.
Yes.
Right. So for those of us who really sweat a lot anyway or perspire a lot, we need to be prepared. We need to rather overhydrate and get ourselves prepared to make sure that we're going to do whatever it is that we're needing to do. For me, it's been tennis for many years and a very laboring sport that requires that. You got to be careful. I don't play tennis in the heat anymore because we need to be aware of some of those symptoms. And so we talked about what can cause that a little bit, right? That dehydration, that cardiac event. But how do you treat heat exhaustion?
So it's fairly easy to treat heat exhaustion. You want to move the individual to a cool, shaded, or air-conditioned space. You want to
Okay.
remove any extra clothing that doesn't need to be on them.
Okay.
You want to try to administer oral fluids, cool fluids if possible.
Right.
If you can, elevate their legs to promote that venous return, getting the blood back to the heart so we can get more transfer of oxygen from the lungs to the heart and get oxygen out to the body. And maybe using fans, cold towels, ice packs. I would recommend probably on the back of the neck, under the arms, in the groin area where you have a lot of superficial blood transfer.
Right, where we're trying to get that blood back through the lungs and through the heart and making sure that we're oxygenating
Right.
much better because that's the issue.
And with heat exhaustion, if you do these things, you should see a rapid improvement
Okay.
in their symptoms or their signs, and they usually respond pretty well to that.
Okay.
And that'll be if their core temperature is between 100 and 103 typically, they'll
Okay.
respond well to this treatment.
Okay.
If they do not respond well, or if you're seeing more severe like central nervous system dysfunction where they're acting irrational, they're not being themselves, they may be combative, or they're just really not themselves, then you might want to suspect heat stroke,
Okay.
which I think we're going to talk about
Right.
in just a minute.
Right.
But that's a medical emergency that you would want to call 911 for.
Right. And so if you don't see that rapid change, then there's a big concern about that. So let's go into heat stroke a little bit about
Right.
when heat exhaustion has been identified, they don't change. Tell us about heat stroke.
So heat stroke, unfortunately, has a lot of the signs and symptoms of heat exhaustion.
Right.
And it's important to note that heat illnesses do not go on a continuum. So you don't necessarily have to suffer heat exhaustion to get to heat stroke.
We can go straight to heat stroke,
Yeah,
right?
your core temp can just go up so rapidly that you collapse and you have a core body temperature of greater than 104, even up to 105 or more,
Wow.
which, like I said, is a medical emergency.
Right.
And the thing to do there is call
Call
911 and really
Get it.
rapid cooling.
Rapid cooling if we
The
can.
most cooling you can do, what we do in the field is cold water immersion at like 60 degrees until their core body temperature gets down to 102.
Under 103, which is
Right.
102. Any specific takeaway, and I'll ask a few seconds here, any specific takeaways you'd like to let people know about?
Hydration. So most people do not hydrate enough. So you actively need to be thinking about your hydration and being cognizant of how much fluid you're taking in. If you're a big sweater, take in electrolytes as well,
Right.
not just water, because you don't want to dilute the blood. And also listen to your body. If you're feeling chills, that's the first sign for me that, okay, you're overdoing it. You need to take it back a second. So listen to your body, and so you know when to modify, stop activity, or just take a break.
Change. Amelia, great information. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it today.
All right, thank you.
All right, guys, that will do it for this particular segment. Don't go anywhere. Let me buy you time when we continue.